Do you suffer from claustrophobia? Are you scared of small spaces? Do you have an unnatural fear of being buried alive? Are you just bored? Well then, we invite you to contact Tiny Spaces. At Tiny Spaces, we treat your fear of tiny spaces with methods backed by years of clinical research. We get to the root of the problem so that you can be completely cured of your claustrophobia with minimal chance of death. At Tiny Spaces, we have carefully crafted a program fit for everyone to overcome their fear. First step is payment. Next, we find out exactly how small of a space you are scared of. Then we put you in a straitjacket. Next, we put you in a space 2 sizes smaller than the space you were scared of. And finally, we seal you in that space with bricks. Once we actually believe that you are no longer claustrophobic, we will release you. But you better make sure we believe you, because if we don't believe you, then you stay in the hole.
Hi there, my name is Dr. Alan Poe. I am the president of Tiny Spaces. But before that, I suffered from horrible claustrophobia. But thanks to my father and his methods, the same methods that we use today, I am now completely cured. That's right, I no longer have a fear of tiny spaces. And we can do the same for you, guaranteed. What are you doing? No, zoom back up. I can't breathe. My throat is closing up.
So if you're ready to be cured, give us a call or stop by today. We're located at 15238 Industrial Road, next to the old abandoned mine. What up? Okay, today's movie is Buried Alive, and we're not talking about this Buried Alive, or this Buried Alive either. No, the Buried Alive we're looking at came out in South Africa in 1989, but it didn't hit the States until October 3rd, 1990. It stars Karen Laurie, or Karen Witter as she's credited, her maiden name, Robert Vaughn, and the one and only Donald Pleasance. The plot is that a new teacher at an unusual school for girls gets suspicious and has weird visions when girls start to go missing. It was directed by Gerard Ciccione? I have no idea how to say his last name, but it's Kikoine. Now, that's an I with 2 dots above it, whatever the hell that means. You probably know some of his other work, Sweet Young Girls and RX for Sex. They're porns. I mean, a lot of his other stuff was porn. Oh yeah, it also runs for about an hour and 30 minutes. Alright, well, if you're ready to get dirty, let's check out Buried Alive.
I don't kill people.
We start off seeing a black cat in this place, and the music is decent here. We see that this is an all-girl place, and this chick is getting out of there. She says bye to her friend, Fingers, played by Nia Long. You probably recognize her from Friday. She gives her a knife, and this chick says that she'll write when she gets to New York. Then she takes off. So now, this says it's Edgar Allan Poe's Buried Alive, but I think it's more for marketing. Now granted, I'm not much of a reader, so I'm not too familiar with this stuff, but from what I can determine, this movie is extremely loosely based on his short story called The Premature Burial. And the only connection between the two that I can find is that they both have a tomb and involve the subject of buried alive. But as you'll see, most people aren't actually buried alive in this movie. Anywho, she makes it to the road, but so does this person who slaps the ever-loving shit out of her before this happens. Okay, starting to have some doubts about this movie. After she lands, the mask shows up, beats her some more, causing her to drop the knife. He then puts her in a straitjacket and tosses her in the room. Oh, and then he bricks it up with her inside. And it's really weird that she doesn't even scream. I mean, she just watches it happen. Also, I think most of you know how I feel about straitjackets. I mean, it's an actual nightmare of mine to be in one of those. I mean, I freak out when my covers are too tight at night. So we can only imagine. I mean, double that with being bricked into a dark room? That is actually terrifying to me, so good job, movie. And I know I've told this story before, but it's that fear of straitjackets that made me lose out on Lethal Weapon 2. Basically, they were going to go in a different direction and not have Mel Gibson in it. That's where I came in, but I'm sure nobody wants to hear that story, so we'll move on. Cut to Janet, played by Karen Laurie. A lot of TV work for her, but she was in The Vineyard with James motherfucking Hong. That guy is the man. We get a random voiceover.
At least it'll be quiet out here. Too quiet, probably.
Doesn't happen again, so it's just to give us some info, but it is weird. Cut to her meeting Gary Julian, played by Robert Vaughn. This dude has 230 acting credits spanning 7 decades. Damn. But what I know him from is Basketball. It's a good movie. Also, the way this is filmed makes me think she's on a boat. It's all rocking back and forth. I guess they were trying to make the scene more dynamic or something. She gets tired, so she pulls over to sleep. The next morning, we see something that makes me think this wasn't filmed in America. Notice what side of the road the cars are driving on? Yeah, they definitely tried to pull a fast one on us here. They never say that it's not in America, and the cop definitely seems like a small-town cop to me. Speaking of which, Ken the cop wakes her up and gives her directions. And he's played by Arnold Vosloo. You probably recognize him from The Mummy, which is a great movie, but for me, he makes me think of Hard Target with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Oh, he also asked if she's seen the chick from the beginning because she's missing. Then we meet the girls of Ravenscroft. What a bunch of delinquents. And here's the head delinquent, Debbie, played by Ginger Lynn. You've probably seen her in Raven, Jailhouse Girls, or most likely, I Want to Come Inside Your Mom 23. So a lot of porn for her too. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I said that, I'd have about 10 cents. You know, I found out pretty quick that people really don't appreciate being told that. Also, Debbie is kind of a psycho. Janet meets with Gary and we find out that he's the one who offered her the job because he runs the joint, and his father before him.
So when your father ran Ravenscroft, it was more of an asylum?
Yes, much more. He actually locked them up.
But he didn't agree with his dad.
I don't want to run a prison.
And Janet asks about the missing girl.
Well, she couldn't adapt.
Janet says after hearing him give his speech, she knew she had to work with him, and he gets a little forward. And I feel like there's supposed to be some symbolism with the cat, but I don't actually think there is. I think they just wanted to put a black cat in here because they're spooky. When Janet gets to her room, we see that she takes medicine for something, then she hears this. So she investigates and gets spied on. And after looking around for a while, she opens a closet door with bugs on it and finds this. So she freaks out, and Dr. Schaefer comes out and they check out the closet together. Obviously there's nothing in there. So she goes back to her room and there's bugs all over the mirror too. Now, at first I thought this was just really bad attention to detail, like they forgot to clear the bugs out, you know? But it's a common theme they put throughout the movie, so I think it's on purpose because there's bugs in the ground and being buried alive. I don't know, that's just a guess. That could be way off. Maybe they just forgot to clean the set. Who knows? The next day in biology, this girl is looking at the frogs and gets scared in a way over the top scene.
I saw him dancing!
Frogs! Oh, God! Yeah. Anyways, the chick gets pissed, so she decides that she's gonna cut Debbie, but Janet intervenes. At lunch, Gary says,
Well, you handled the situation very well from what I hear.
And maybe he shouldn't be in charge if he thinks that this is handling it very well. I mean, we didn't see what happened, because it cut away before she gets thrown on the ground and kicked 23 times. We also find out
it's really very peaceful here.
Later, the frog chick decides to prison curl her hair, but before she can finish... And now this is an okay death scene. I mean, I don't know why the mixer shorted out, but either way, she gets scalped and it's done fairly well, and it would be horrible to actually have happen to you, so yeah, it's okay. Now, who else thinks handkerchiefs are really gross? Because I don't understand why you would keep a snot rag in your pocket, but that's apparently used to be a thing. Janet finds out that Frog Chick is also missing now, and Gary says,
Why can't they understand this isn't a prison?
As Janet is standing around, we get more ants, and she has another vision that goes on for what feels like a really long time. It's also oddly very specific to what's actually real in their world. A new girl shows up. Her name doesn't really matter, because she won't be around for too long. Over drinks, we find out Janet's dad died when she was younger, and...
Yes, it's hard to please a strong father.
We also find out...
It's hard to let go. My father was crippled, yet still a strong influence.
And Gary continues with the sweet talk.
You're strong. It's one of the reasons I wanted you to come here.
Then he goes for it, and she acts like it's no big deal.
I'm sorry. I think it's getting a little late.
During shower time, we see that Debbie likes Gary.
Shut up about Gary. You try and rip Gary off or anything, I'm gonna cut your throat.
At least we do get some nudity here. I mean, how are you gonna do a movie about a girls' school and not have a shower scene? I mean, it would be downright blasphemous, right? As the girls are initiating fingers into something, I can't tell what, and it's very weird, Janet has another freak out. And I gotta say, as a student, I wouldn't feel that Janet was necessarily qualified to teach me anything. I mean, you open the door and she's standing on the toilet having a panic attack. I'm gonna say, you know what, I'm good. I think I've learned everything I can before you. That night, Debbie suggests,
What do you say we play Explorers?
I mean, it doesn't sound like much of a game to me, but I'm not a chick with big hair. So they head down to the basement with the new girl trailing way behind. After walking around for a bit and finding the knife she gave to the girl in the beginning, Fingers finally finds the others and it's party time. And as New Girl is watching, she gets got, and at least she doesn't just watch without saying anything. I mean, it doesn't help her, but at least she tried. Okay, so right here is when I finally realized that Dr. Schaefer is played by Donald Pleasence. I mean, I don't know why it took me so long, but I guess the hair and the glasses, plus the accent, I mean, it really threw me. But yeah, I mean, he was in Halloween, Escape from New York, and a bunch of other really great movies. Next, we find out Gary is starting to doubt himself and his methods.
You seem to think that these girls are running away from your methods.
If my methods were working, they wouldn't be running.
Also, Gary keeps trying to get Janet. Talking to Fingers, Janet finds out that...
I found this in the basement the other night, and I gave it to Tina the night she left.
Then she continues to be a good teacher and gives her the blade back.
Well, you handled the situation very well from what I hear.
Here, take it. I don't want it. You never saw me. We never talked about this. You stabbed someone, I don't know you. Fingers shows Janet the party spot, then takes off. Janet decides to look around, and she finds an old part of the asylum. And then Dr. Schaefer shows up along with the cat. Again, I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Or maybe she's just imagining it, it's hard to tell at this point. It's kind of like the little kid in Parents. Janet runs away to hide in a cell, it looks like, and then she looks behind this door and... So it's just all sorts of weird shit happening here. I mean, it turns out Schaefer was down there.
You must never go down like this.
But he says there's no old man down there. And remember this earlier? Okay, see? So that's a good way to get pink eye. That's why you never use someone else's handkerchief. Debbie talks to Gary about Janet.
Everybody hates her. We're gonna boycott the bitch.
And we find out that he's transferring Debbie. Then Janet sees this picture and freaks out again.
That's my father.
She tells him about what she saw, but he dismisses it with logic. Then casually gets way ahead of himself.
I love you. You need a rest.
See, now, she didn't stop him before with advances, but now would be the optimal time to say, hey, I'm not interested. Instead of just acting like nothing happened, just, oh, no big deal. I've known you for a few days. You love me, okay. Debbie sneaks out to see her boyfriend, and while making out, an unusual move, but I guess it's effective. Janet asks where Debbie went, and Gary says,
Remember, I told you she was being transferred. Dr. Schaefer thought it should be done quickly without any ruckus.
Ken stops by with the mom of Debbie's boyfriend, and Janet finds out.
Dr. Schaefer? Oh, he's a doctor now, is he? 10 years ago, he was just another loony.
So she asks Gary about it.
Yes, he was, years ago. One of my first big successes.
She also points out some of the other stuff that's been happening, and Gary outdoes himself.
Something for you. I want you to marry me.
Where would he possibly get the idea that she wants to marry him? Okay, I'll say it. Their relationship is moving entirely too fast. I mean, a boss shouldn't propose to one of his subordinates until at least, I don't know, week 2? Way too soon, Gary. And again, she doesn't stop him. Got to finding out who's been nabbing the girls, and it's... of course it is. Okay, well, he's doing this to Debbie because she doesn't like Janet. And as we know, he really likes Janet. Also, he's crazy.
To acknowledge the fact that I really can help you.
And committed to be seen as a success.
You see, if you do not get better, it looks like my methods are a failure, that I'm a failure.
Debbie and her guy get loose and they fight for a little bit until ultimately her boy gets taken out. Then Debbie becomes the first person to be actually buried alive. Well, mostly. Closer than anyone else. Also, Gary doesn't realize what he's doing.
Don't be silly, Debbie. I don't kill people.
While Gary's on the phone, Janet sneaks into his files and sees that he listed Debbie as running away, and when she questions him about it, he says,
I didn't transfer Debbie. She ran away.
He also explains what the girls need.
They need to think about things. That's the only way they'll ever get well.
And he knows what will work because
That's how my father made me better.
Janet realizes that he's nutters and she finds a way out of there. She goes to talk to Ken the cop when her car won't start and Gary shows up. Janet doesn't want to talk, so she takes off. A little chase ensues and they end up in the basement or caverns. Schaefer tries to help her but doesn't do a great job. A lot more chasing takes place until Gary finds her. When she wakes up, she's being bricked in Gary's room. She gets him to think that she loves him, and when the time is right, she pins his face. Then he starts wildly swinging an axe, causing gas to leak. Then this shit happens.
Gary, we need a little punishment.
So if Dad could break out when he's older and more feeble, how the hell could he not break out when he was first put in? I don't get it. Either way, this happens next. And Gary and his dad are buried alive. I mean, again, kind of. The next day, Ken the cop explains that they haven't found Gary's body yet. Ken also says,
You ought to check with the local school. I'm sure they could use a good teacher, you know.
Again, she gave the blade back to Fingers. Not a good teacher. Anyways, cut back to the basement and we see the cat again, of course. But we also see this shit. Then this suckfest ends. And now for some fun facts. This was John Carradine's final film. He played Gary's dad in the wheelchair. This guy has 355 acting credits spanning 6 decades. Or, okay, so another way to say it is he had at least one acting credit every year from 1930 to 1988 when this was filmed, with the exception of 1948, 1950, and 1963. So just 3 years. That's super impressive. Dude was working. I Wanna Come Inside Your Mom 23 was followed up by the much anticipated sequel, I Wanna Come Inside Your Mom 24. To much critical acclaim, I might add. Apparently when Poe wrote The Premature Burial, he was taking advantage of the kind of fascination people had with I guess I shouldn't say fascination, the fear so many people had of actually being buried alive. Apparently there were numerous cases of people being mistakenly reported dead by doctors and being buried. I don't exactly know how they would have found out unless people clawed their ways out, but apparently they also started putting emergency release hatches. I don't know exactly. This is from Wikipedia, but in coffins in case people were mistakenly pronounced dead when they weren't. So there's some nightmare fuel for you. If I got any fans of the show Father Ted out there, you'll remember an episode where one of the people is pronounced dead and the other two have to stay with him overnight just to make sure that he wasn't mistakenly pronounced dead because he had a fair fear of being buried alive. So if you haven't seen that show, you should definitely check it out. It's pretty good. I think when I die, I don't want to be buried. I'm pretty sure I want to be cremated and have my ashes be set into a stripper pole. I think that's really where I want to be. So, should you watch it?
No.
No, it just didn't quite get there. I mean, it tried, but it isn't good, you know? First of all, people aren't buried alive. I mean, maybe if they called it entombed alive, but they didn't, you know? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, Gary was proposing by day 3, and Gary was proposing by day 3, and Janet barely even responded. And not to mention the weird visions? I don't know, you know, it's just not my thing. I get what they were going for, kind of. It's just the execution wasn't there. It's one of the few Donald Pleasance movies that I've seen that I don't like, so that's something, I guess. But if it's still available when I post this, I'll put a link in the description where you can check it out. But I think it's gonna be expired by then, which really isn't any big loss, unless you like punishment. But also check out my last review I did for Leprechaun. All right, see you.